What would happen to Earth if humans vanished overnight? Would the planet crumble or heal? Let's take a glimpse into the future of a world without us. One day without humans. Within 24 hours, most power plants would stop working due to lack of human oversight. Cities would go dark, except a few, like Las Vegas, which relies on the Hoover Dam's hydroelectric power. It could glow for months thanks to water flow alone. Wind turbines and solar panels might continue briefly, until lubricant dries up or dust covers the panels. Subway tunnels in most cities would begin to flood within 36 hours as pump systems fail. 1 week. Without maintenance, food in stores and homes would rot. Pets might survive briefly by drinking water from melting freezers, but many would starve or escape to fend for themselves. Sewage plants would shut down, releasing waste into rivers and lakes. Pipes would burst, flooding streets. Famous landmarks like Big Ben would stop ticking, and wax figures at Madame Tussauds would melt without climate control. Nuclear plants, without cooling systems, might overheat and explode, like Chernobyl or Fukushima. 1 month. Dikes and dams in low-lying cities like Rotterdam would fail, causing flooding. JFK, Heathrow, and other major airports would become overgrown. Cruise ships near Alaska would freeze and capsize. Most smartphones and batteries would be dead. 6 months. Wildlife would reclaim cities. Coyotes and lynxes would enter suburbs, followed by deer, then larger predators like wolves and bears. Rodents would exhaust available food and move on. Without lights or noise, nature would begin its quiet takeover. 1 year. Skyscrapers would sprout weeds, moss, and vines. Wood buildings would attract termites. New Orleans' Audubon Aquarium would lose all marine life. Even the Hoover Dam would eventually clog for mussels. Las Vegas would go completely dark. Cargo ships untethered would crash into bridges and sink. The International Space Station, without course correction, would fall and burn upon re-entry. 10 years. Cities would resemble jungles. Red Square in Moscow and Washington, D.C. would turn green with wild grass. Fires would consume abandoned towns. In places like Sacramento, flooding would wash planes into buildings, causing further destruction. 25 years. Washington would turn swampy. The Lincoln Memorial, Buckingham Palace gates, and other monuments would be overrun by vines. Lions, tigers, and rhinos could roam the streets. Sea levels would swallow coastal cities like London and Amsterdam. In deserts, sand would bury entire towns. Teotihuacan in Mexico would be lush with vegetation but still recognizable. 50 years. Wood buildings would rot or burn. Brick and stone structures would sprout trees. Dams would erode. Earthquakes in seismic zones like Los Angeles could level remaining structures. 100 years. Cars would rust into heaps, except in deserts where dry air slows decay. Rubber tires wouldn't decompose for centuries. The Golden Gate and Brooklyn bridges would collapse from cable corrosion. Metro tunnels would flood, turning city streets into canals. 1/3 of all skyscrapers would fall. Urban areas would resemble forests more than cities. 200 years. Most remaining structures would collapse. Even the Eiffel Tower would corrode and fall. But one odd survivor would stand out: Cadillac Ranch in Texas. Its 10 nose-down Cadillacs, covered in thick paint, would hold up better than most vehicles. All wooden houses would be gone. 300 years. Swampy cities like Washington, St. Petersburg, Amsterdam, and London would sink into the earth. Discs, photographs, and other media would disintegrate. Even the Taj Mahal could fall after centuries of earthquakes. Only marble sculptures like the Venus de Milo might remain intact. 1,000 years. Modern cities would vanish under green overgrowth. Manhattan would return to its original wetlands. Massive stone structures like the Egyptian pyramids, the Great Wall of China, and medieval castles might remain. But even they wouldn't survive forever. Earthquakes would take their toll. 10,000 years. Only a few massive structures would still exist. Buried pyramids, fragments of the Great Wall, and Mount Rushmore's faces carved into granite. Everything else would be lost. The final signs of humanity would orbit Earth, broken satellites and lunar rovers from Apollo mission. Millions of years later, human remains would fossilize. The last legacy of our existence would be buried bones and space debris floating above a planet we once ruled. If you enjoyed this video and want to explore more mind-bending scenarios, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a release.